attempted murder gives birth behind jail cell bars to a beautiful baby girl. This baby doesn't have a mother. The baby girl is placed in the custody of her father. She grows up in a world thinking the only way to get love or attention from a man is by being sexually intimate. Her sad excuse of a father sold his child as a prostitute at the young age of 18 months old. Multiple hospital visits and medical evaluations eventually resulted in his rights getting terminated. She was turned over to her grandparents as she started kindergarten. Although he was demanded not to have any contact with his daughter, the grandparents allowed him to visit and ultimately live with them up until age 8. Once just one of my mother's emotional support students was now my sister. We had a long journey ahead of us. Here's a picture of when we first adopted my sister. Her name is Lisa. She has a disorder called reactive attachment disorder that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. Reactive attachment disorder, also referred to as RAD, is a rare disorder that children from troubled childhood develop after being neglected and abused. Attachment is the deep and enduring connection established between a child and caregiver in the first few years of life. According to an article by Horner in 2008, there is no way to put an end to RAD. Once you develop it, you have it for life. Although it is a permanent disorder, there are some ways to cope. I'll discuss some of the main indicators that identify a person suffering from RAD and what causes the individual to act a certain way due to the disorder. You might be asking yourself, what exactly causes reactive attachment disorder? Sexual abuse is one of the main indicators, or one of the main reasons why a child develops reactive attachment disorder. A child who is sexually abused typically is led to believe that the only way to get affection is by being promiscuous. For example, a child who is in foster care might think that flirting with the male figure in the house is how to get on his good side or make a good impression. A connection I have with this is when I was in high school, I had a boyfriend that came over to the house to meet my sister for the first time after we adopted her. She thought nothing of sitting on his lap and being extremely flirty, trying to get on his good side to make a good first impression. She didn't know there was nothing wrong with this. She didn't think there was anything wrong with this. She thought she was just making a good impression and he would like her. Another reason that a child could develop RAD is maltreatment. Lack of affection can be a big reason as to why children develop the disorder. For example, if a child is left laying down in a crib crying hours on end and is not getting face-to-face attention, it is hard for them to develop a relationship with the caregiver. In an article by Mercedes in 2000, most parents and caregivers think nothing of holding their baby in their arms and talking to them face-to-face and playing with them. From the day they're born, this is helping their brain develop, and this begins to create a bond with the caregiver and the baby. My sister is extremely hard to understand when she talks. One of the reasons why it's so hard to understand her is when she was a baby, she didn't get face-to-face interaction. Speech pathologists have said this is due to the lack of attention she had in just her first few years of learning to talk. When you talk face-to-face with a child, they often stare at your lips and they notice how your lips move and the way your mouth moves. This is how they learn how to sound out words. For instance, she has a hard time holding her tongue down when saying certain words because she had nothing to mimic off of. Another question you might have are, what are some ways to tell if a child is suffering from reactive attachment disorders? They react differently towards others than somebody without the disorder would. One of the biggest symptoms of RAD is the way the individual acts around strangers. They are often quick to trust and share information with people they don't know, whereas they are often distant with the people who love them. This is really obvious with my sister. She has a hard time telling my mom stuff, even stuff about school. But if somebody that she barely knows, it's one of my friends that she meets for the first time, she might tell her whole life story, but she can't even tell my mom how her day went at school. Some early signs in babies that they might be developing RAD are they avoid eye contact, they don't smile, they don't reach out to be picked up, they reject your effort to calm, soothe, and connect, and they don't seem to notice or care when you leave them alone. They also have delayed development as to when they start to talk. They don't make coos or any normal sounds that you would picture babies make. They don't make them until normally around 2 to 3 years old. They also have a hard time showing emotions as they get older. It is very hard for people with reactive attachment disorder to show that they are concerned in any way. They often come off cold as if nothing affects them. This can be extremely frustrating for those around the person. We all make mistakes, and we have all hurt someone before and have felt guilty about it afterwards. People with RAD have no way of showing they are sorry that they feel guilt. We all have hurt somebody in one way or another, most of the time not on purpose, but we all naturally will feel guilty and will want to apologize and will want to fix things. Kids with reactive attachment disorder don't have that feeling. They don't know how to express it. Even showing excitement or happiness is difficult for them. They could have just won tickets to see their favorite artist perform, and they show almost no excitement or emotion. It's not that they don't feel excited, it's just that they have a very hard time displaying it. My sister, I remember, she wanted UGG boots for a long time, and my dad finally bought them for her, $200 boots, and she had no way of being. I believe she was thankful for them, but she had no way of showing. We all want to try to help her as much as we can. So here are some ways to help someone with RAD cope. If you have a relationship with someone, it is important to maintain realistic expectations. Whether you have adopted a child with RAD like my family did, or if you're dating someone or friends with someone who has it, you have to remember that they have a legitimate disorder. They are already struggling more than most of us can even begin to understand. Expecting them to be able to act the way a person without RAD is impractical. Another thing is to have patience. I know from experience, whether it was watching my 8-year-old sister hit on my boyfriend or my parents spending $200 on her hair and her acting unappreciative, it is very frustrating. Sometimes it is extremely hard to remain calm. And remember that it is not her fault she was abused. You have to remember somebody did this to her. It's not her choice. Being patient and calm will make the journey so much easier. I had to learn this the hard way. Although this can't be cured, there are ways to attempt to repair it as much as possible. One of the ways is to be ready to comfort the child right after conflict. For instance, if a daughter and mother get in a fight, especially we adopted her when she was 8, so that was like preteen years. Right now she's 13 years old almost, and I'm sure you all remember getting in arguments with your parents when you were that age. You have to be there immediately after a conflict. When she storms off and goes to her room, you have to be there and let her know that you care, and you're going to be her shoulder to cry on whether you're upset with her or not. They need reassurance that they are loved and they still care. When you feel yourself overreacting or letting frustration get the best of you, you have to own up to your mistake. I know sometimes that can be hard to admit that we're wrong, but it's very important that you let the child know you're very sorry for overreacting and that you know you may have came off differently than you would like to. This strengthens the attachment between the child and adult when the child knows you are willing to take responsibility for your mistakes. It's very important because, as I stated before, they have a very hard time displaying their emotions, so if you're more able to give an example and show them how to go about talking when you made a mistake, when you're upset, when you're happy, it gives them an example to go off of because they've never had that before. In conclusion, I've discussed the causes, symptoms, and strategies to help a child with RAD cope with their struggles. Being around someone with RAD, especially a teenager, is very hard. I've never been around someone that could frustrate me as much as my sister does. As I have previously discussed, it is important to remember that this is not their fault. They did not choose to have the disorder. Reactive attachment disorder is pretty unheard of. You will rarely hear about it. There is no cure or solution to the problem, unfortunately. We, as their peers, family, or friends, need to be there for them and remind them that they are loved and there is hope that everything will be okay. Loving someone with RAD isn't easy, but I wouldn't trade my beautiful sister for anything in the world. I've seen her come from rock bottom and slowly rise to make friends and live a normal life with a family that would do anything in the world for her. My only hope is that one day she will realize just how much we love her. Thank you.